I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so thrilled today to be talking about the Netflix film Lady Chatterley's Lover. We are joined today by director Laure de Clermont-Tonnerre, along with actor Jack O'Connell. And Laure, I wanted to start by talking about the way that you visually explore the themes in the film, because, you know, it's a very different film to The Mustang, which was so beautiful, but both films have this really wonderful in-depth exploration of the idea of restraint and rediscovery of oneself. And so I was interested in, coming off the back of making that The Mustang, kind of when you first were sitting with the script of this, how you started to conceptualize the way that you visually wanted to approach those themes for this film.
So when I read the script, it was March 2020 in full pandemic, and it's the themes, very similar themes than Mustang, the need of freedom, the importance of nature, the imprisonment, and with a very different settings and through a woman's journey, and especially like the sensuality between Coney and Mellors really reminded the sensuality between the man and the horse in the Mustang. So it felt very, very connected and very organic for me to dive into the story with the same vivid need to express sensuality, freedom, importance of the body, and also the two binary location. Mustang was the inside of the prison, outside the ground, the nature, and same for the story of Coney and Mellors and Clifford, like the imprisonment into the very importance of the house, of the property, and her breaking free and running around and going to the woods, and the nature as being like her safe space. So the cinematography is really like something very much more claustrophobic inside, and a very loose camera for the outside. Handheld was really like our medium for like all the nature and the outdoor spaces. And we focused with Benoît Delhomme, the cinematographer, on autochrome, which is a technique of the 20s, like a photographic technique of the 20s, and that we modernized. So we love the blue and green palette, some diffused light that feels like very kind of monochromes, and so that was what we explored, of going to the dusk, purple, blue, green. Yeah.
I love all of that. And Jack, in talking about your character in the film, I was interested in kind of the initial starting point for developing this character, because he's someone who has found himself in a space of being very closed off to a lot of people in the world around him. And, you know, we see that through things like the relationship that he has with animals. And he's someone who doesn't say very much out loud, but the words that he does say have a lot of meaning. And so what was the initial inroad into really discovering and developing your version of this character?
Yeah, I think like they're very fascinating types of individuals that are like had to, through one reason or another, had to become very economical, and so like when they talk, you listen, and what they do is there's like a purity in what they do. And in Mellors' case, he's obviously become a bit of a recluse, and so the reasons for that were fascinating to me. I don't claim to fully understand them, but what is clear within the writing, and especially in the novel, is that there's an element of rejection from Mellors to what is expected of him from society, or a rejection from Mellors. I think obviously that would be accentuated through his time serving in the army. So yeah, no, there was this definite purity and this sort of refinement that to me is a very very interesting thing to try and understand. And that for me was like he's a very apparent quality in him.
I love that description, and you're touching upon the book there as well, which you've mentioned previously was actually a really useful tool alongside the script. And so how did that help you in kind of understanding some more of the aspects of who this character was beyond what you had on the page from the adaptation in the script?
Yeah, sure. Look, endlessly, you know, like it'd be you'd be daft not to use it, especially writing that is of this type of caliber, which was so honest and like just able to capture a snapshot in time with such depth, is real genius. And so, yeah, look, I won't lie, it was a beacon for me, and a constant source of guidance. And I think, you know, Laure, we sort of shared that in common as well. That so that was a great thing to agree on, especially with Emma involved as well. We really had the three of us constantly curious to find out more, and we had this Bible on offer. So yeah, it definitely contributed to having a deeper sense of understanding, which is vital, I think.
It's really wonderful. And Lauren, coming back to talking about the directing of the film, you know, what's so striking is it's this exploration between these two people as they're coming together. And we have the internal aspect of what that means emotionally to both of them, both as individuals and together. And then also the external exploration of just them becoming more physically comfortable around each other. And even just, you know, small gestures of like hands touching suddenly becoming more pronounced as the film progresses. And so how did you work to make sure in the way that you were telling the story and working with Jack and Emma, that it was always this real balance between the internal side of it, the emotional side, and the external side of what that looks like in their dynamic as well?
I think what I was really moved is the you know, how two human beings recognize that they come from the same wood, that they made from the same wood, and there's something unpalpable and kind of cosmic that happens. And obviously, you can't really predict if two actors are going to connect. And I felt very grateful. It's such a great gift when you have two actors wanting to bring the same energy, the same message, and pairing mind. It was something very, very special. So it was actually a pretty easy work altogether to build this intimacy between the characters. And there was a lot of humor, sense of humor, playfulness, gentleness, tenderness. That was kind of natural coming out from their friendship, which really, really helped, especially for all the intimacy scene. It was really hard and challenging. And also we were guided and helped so much by this intimacy coordinator, Ita O'Brien, who really kind of desexualized in a way what we wanted to achieve, like by being very procedural and approaching it by like dancing choreography, and we had a lot of laughing, and it was such sometimes absurd situation. We really cemented our and build that trust to each other to go through, to build this very sensitive, sensorial, sensual, sexual connection. And yes, she really guided and she really helped me so much also to, you know, to be authentic and to really like break the shyness that I could have, you know, obviously. So after like a lot of rehearsal together, we were very comfortable to explore this intimacy, this sexuality, this nudity, and that was really helpful. But I have to say that it's a lot of work and it's also a lot of luck. Without Jack and Emma and having them being so supportive to each other and trusting each other, you don't have a film. So
Yeah, no, Ita's got incredible experience in the industry with the projects that she's done. And I love that that was part of the rehearsal process and that you had that time. And so wanted to ask about that 2-week period and, you know, beyond the work that you were doing on that side of the film with the intimacy with Ita, kind of, was it a case of wanting to really dive into elements of scenes or really just doing other exercises to build that sense of intrinsic intimacy and intrinsic trust between the two of you? And that's for both of you in terms of what that 2-week process was like.
I think like what we really wanted to define is what's the emotional impulse behind those scenes, because you can do, you know, you can be redundant, gratuitous, boring. That's not what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to make sure that there's an emotional narration behind, and you feel that there's that's pushing the relationship always further, always more intimate, always more passionate and real and authentic. So we talked a lot. We talked about the shape, the right positions, the right choreography, the body language, the invisible dialogues between those moments, everything that's not palpable, but that you can feel and feel so true and honest. And so that was, and then obviously Ita helped us to choreograph, but it really came from this collaboration, from this quatuor, I would say.
And for you, Jack, what was the most beneficial aspects of that time and also just having that space with Emma, so that when you were on set working with them, there was that kind of freedom of discovering even deeper elements with one another?
Oh, I mean, listen, there's no, I really can't improve on what Laure has just said there, because I just think that is a very profound take on exactly what we experienced. And yeah, listen, in my very less sophisticated way, I always could contribute to that is you can't turn up onto a set day one and try and forge this thing that was required between Emma and myself in order to tell this story properly. I just don't think you can do that. Like, I mean, that it takes a serious bit of acting to just pull that off. So yeah, we needed the 2 weeks. We needed the sort of behind closed doors, and with Laure's steerage, with Ita's supervision, really starting from like the bare bones, really, of what was then going to be required of us. Because it takes a lot of nerve. It does. I'm sure anyone can agree with that. It can be quite a daunting thing, and I don't think it should be handled improperly, and it certainly wasn't on this job. It was, and such an intrinsic part of the story. It was just handled with the sensibility and care that was warranted, and I'm really pleased and proud with the outcome.
Absolutely. And Laura, I wanted to talk also as well about some of the editing in the film. I know that you were working with an editor that you've been working with since your very first short film. And so again, there's just that language between the two of you. And you know, there's so much kind of emotional pacing that has to be really delicately balanced throughout the film. And even the moments where we're getting the voiceover narration from Emma for when Connie's writing to her sister, you know, in terms of like the visual elements that we're seeing on screen and how that evolves what we're hearing through the narrative. What were some of the challenging elements that came with the delicacy of what this required and just finding that emotional trajectory at the right pace throughout the film?
Yes, what I really love in working with Géraldine, Géraldine Mangenot, the editor, she's very, she gives a visceral, a sensorial experience in editing. She does those cuts where you feel very invested physically because it's going from like a close up, then a wide, and so suddenly you're feeling it, you're into it, because it's not a comfortable edit, which I love. It gives you sensations, and I love her approach because she's visceral, she's instinctive, and she's very free. sometimes she would just like, you know, she's not like obviously she cares about continuity, but in a way that it really serves the story and not like in a classic way. So she's very untraditional in this, and so she always brings this all the sensorial. She brings all the sensitivity into a way that's it's connect together, and it's very organic. So that was really fun, and also like working from the inside to the outside, which is inside the house, everything is much more claustrophobic and rigid, and outside is much more loose and free. And so we and all the importance of nature. And editing for her, the scenes of intimacy was a real challenge. And for both of us, it took a lot of time because it's very delicate. Sometimes you feel it's too long, and then it just like damaged the rest of the relationship. So you need to make sure that those scenes are giving the right impact and impulse emotionally. And that was like the real challenge. It took a while.
Yeah. And coming back to you, Jack, you know, you were talking before about some of the more insular elements of your character. And at the same time, we're watching him go through this real journey with himself to the point where he feels comfortable enough just running out in the rain with Connie. And so kind of knowing that that was a standpoint and a tipping point for him as a character as to where you were taking him from the beginning, where he's barely saying a word and he just kind of physically and emotionally and language-wise just feels a little bit more uncomfortable and distant from everyone around him. How did you work to kind of really craft the delicacy of, okay, he's going to start to feel a bit more comfortable here. Here's where he's going to, you know, express himself a little bit more or physically feel a little bit more comfortable around Connie throughout the film to reach that point of the rain?
Yeah. I think the main clues there are definitely within the writing. Is he goes from being very economical with his words to eventually very, very open and kind of you know, this like exploring in a way, exploring each other. So the clues were on the page for sure. I mean, I think another great way to sort of recognize that as well is to sort of feel it in real time, because different things are going to happen on the day. You know, and less like a gradual progression of one thing that's just an arc, but you know, like it's obviously it can get quite complicated, this sort of topic. You know, where would he then feel like he had to cut off from Connie? Where would there be a regression? I just think they're the beautiful nuances that happen in life, and if you can kind of include that in your work and portraying a story that is so nuanced as this one, then yeah, great. But as I say, there are clues. There are always clues, and I think the main thing is just to stay attentive. And you know, God willing, you'd have someone like Laure in charge, and who's got that same sort of sense and sensibility as you'd want from somebody who's going to tell a story like this as it's sort of deserved and warranted. And you know, no one better than Laure, in my view, to do that. She was a constant guide, and that just has to be said.
Thank you, Jack.
It's amazing. And I love how much, you know, Jack is kind of using the word nuance to describe the delicacy of that. And, you know, Laure similarly knowing that with both of these characters that you're carrying to that central space of just, you know, complete exuberance and complete freedom, you know, but like you said, never wanting it to feel rigid at the beginning. How did you in directing and in the editing of leading towards that arc, make sure that you were always carrying both of those characters to that space emotionally together?
I mean, it's a lot of obviously we worked very carefully about the arc of Mellors and Connie separately, and also their arc together. Mm-hmm. but the editing was really key also to really balance, you know, the nuances, the emotion, to make sure that we were always like, you know, bringing the delicacy of the story. But I have to say also that Jack and Emma had a very a similar idea of what was the relationship, the nature of the relationship, and were always like very surprising into their choices of bringing always this story to the present. And it felt extremely authentic because it felt that immersive, and it was here and now. And that makes it extremely exciting and surprising, because it was it felt that each time was always something different. That was built from their chemistry, and now that's, you can't really make that up.
And Jack, in coming back to you as well, you know, there's a lot of lines of dialogue where we get an essence of how the world has viewed him and how the world has treated him. You know, whether it's the way that his personality is being described as being a bit gruff at first when you first meet him, but having more of a tenderness, you know, his intelligence when he was growing up. But then there's also the element where when she's talking to him about her plan in having their child, that he all of a sudden feels like maybe that was just the plan all along, and the rest of what he saw wasn't true. And he says that line about, it's not the first time that I've been made use of. So we know that he's been through a lot. And then obviously everything with his wife kind of stepping out on him and still kind of refusing to divorce him. How did you, in going through the scripts in particular, really look at a lot of those details in how the world has treated him and how the world has viewed him? And what evolutions did that give to how you originally envisioned the character, and things that you felt were really important to bring into him in your performance?
I probably, first and foremost, I think was he's intelligent enough to understand the hypocrisy and inefficacy of the system that prevents him, just the system that prevents him. So, you know, I think he's a man that is very intelligent and emotionally intelligent and learned and well read, and all of these like kind of virtuous traits, but there's no avenue, there's nothing available for him to explore that. There's nothing available for him to prosper is probably not the right word, but certainly one I can think of. So yeah, and a lot of ways that is his curse, because he can kind of pull back the facade of all of that and see it for the ridiculousness that it is. And I think once you put that in this particular period in British history, you know, the vitality of that was like so apparent and so immediate. So many lives lost during, you know, the particular war that he served in, that I just think that's an unimaginable thing to try and comprehend. So how do you find peace with that? And I don't think he's a man that considers himself a victim. I think that he's managed to find some peace, given all of that sort of turmoil, and that to me is fascinating. I think that is like that's just such a fascinating trait, and like a common trait within people of this period. So yeah, I guess that was kind of the picture I wanted to paint for myself in order to try and understand Mellors. And then it was just try and crack on from there, you know.
I love that. And, you know, Laure, in some of the ways that you've been describing your directing of this film, it sounds like, you know, there was a lot of intention in having it feel very timeless in a lot of ways. You know, whether it was the camera movement with the use of handheld and having that bring a real energy and life to the charisma between them, or even elements with costume where maybe it's the silhouette of the period, but it never feels completely restrictive. You know, Emma's not running around wearing corsets the whole time. And so how did you find the elements of where it felt important to be very true to the time period and where it felt important to you to give yourself that freedom of, okay, maybe we'll have this silhouette, but we'll have a more modern material, and maybe we're going to do this with the camera so that it feels very fresh and very modern, even though it's telling a time period piece?
Yes, the idea was to never be trapped into the 20s as if you were doing a documentary. But it's obviously the classicism of the story is rooted into this period of the 20s, but with a modern lens. And the juxtaposition between our lens and the lens from the past to distort some of the elements of truth from the 20s and to bring a little bit more of modern elements was really fun to work on, especially in costumes and music. As a costume designer, Emma Fryer, we obviously took some dresses from the time period, but also some dresses from like modern stores that you can find, you know, today in London, and with like lighter fabric and some patterns from today, and it was interesting how to give like always a modern feel and never felt that it was like dusty or too corseted, as you said. In the music also, we kept like a classic score, but with moments of real some rock influences and modern instruments, and sometimes you can hear electric guitar, and it's just because we always wanted to kind of get away and play with the time periods. And sometimes even if the classic score that tells the story, there's modern instrument that talks about how Connie evolves and where she and it's very much more sensorial than being like, you know, exact. And so it's I think that's all those elements and working on very modern tools in cinematography, that gives like a timeless feeling. That's it's from the past, but it could be today. You don't really know. It's sometimes, you know, and also because the nature is like timeless, obviously. So it's just I wanted to play with that so that it feels really accessible, and yeah.
I love that. Well, you've both done such wonderful work in the way that you've told this story and created this film. So congratulations on everything. And thank you so much for your time today and talking about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.